The Phantom of the North, the tale of HMS Resolute. Born as a proud creation of British maritime ambition, HMS Resolute embarked on a daring expedition, a grim pursuit for answers in one of the most merciless environments on Earth. This is the extraordinary account of HMS Resolute, a vessel swallowed by Arctic ice, only to defy nature and return, transformed into a symbol of endurance, enigma, and uncanny nautical fate. HMS Resolute, commissioned by the Royal Navy and launched in 1850, was specially constructed for a perilous mission to uncover the fate of the ill-fated Franklin expedition. By the time Resolute joined the rescue efforts, Sir John Franklin and his two vessels, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, had already disappeared into the frozen abyss, consumed by the merciless Arctic while searching for the elusive Northwest Passage. Britain, desperate to reclaim its lost explorers and determined to find answers, dispatched multiple search missions. Among them was Resolute, outfitted with hulls strengthened to resist the crushing forces of Arctic ice. Venturing into the glacial unknown, she sailed headfirst into the white wilderness. But the Arctic is no mere ocean, it is a shifting maze of fractured ice and treacherous pressure ridges. In 1854, after years of fruitless searching and slowly losing ground to the advancing ice, HMS Resolute was ultimately abandoned. Trapped by the relentless pack ice, her crew had no option but to journey on foot across the frozen expanse to reach safety, leaving behind their formidable ship to its frosty doom. Like many ships doomed to the Arctic, HMS Resolute was presumed to have become part of the polar graveyard, crushed, buried, and forgotten beneath centuries of snow and silence. Yet, the ship's tale took an astonishing turn toward myth. 2 years later, in 1855, an American whaling ship stumbled upon a seemingly impossible sight off the coast of Baffin Island, HMS Resolute, weather-worn but structurally intact, adrift in the icy sea. Against all odds, she had escaped her frozen prison and drifted thousands of miles south without a crew. It seemed the ship possessed a mind of her own, defying the Arctic's claim and steering herself back into human hands. The recovery of Resolute sparked astonishment and speculation. Maritime observers were baffled. How had a ship entombed in solid ice not only endured but traveled so far unguided? Some hailed it as a marvel. Others called it a bizarre stroke of destiny. Regardless, the vessel was recovered by the Americans and returned to Britain as a diplomatic gesture, a token of goodwill during a time of fragile relations between the two nations. Welcomed back by the Royal Navy, Resolute returned briefly to active duty, a ship resurrected from a frozen tomb. But her journey did not end there. Upon being formally retired, Resolute's timbers were carefully preserved and repurposed to craft something iconic, the Resolute desk. This magnificent piece of furniture was presented by Queen Victoria to the President of the United States, a powerful emblem of peace and unity. Today, that very desk resides in the Oval Office, silently connecting the modern world to the ghost of a 19th century explorer that refused to be forgotten. Of course, a rational explanation for Resolute's improbable voyage suggests shifting sea ice and ocean currents carried her into navigable waters. But for seasoned sailors, especially those who've braved the Arctic, such neat answers never quite suffice. They've witnessed hulls that groan like living things, movements that defy logic, and vessels that seem to breathe with ghostly life. To them, Resolute wasn't just a ship, she was a soul adrift, animated by forces unseen. For those mariners, the tale of HMS Resolute was proof that no vessel is truly gone until the sea claims it completely, and sometimes not even then. Some ships refuse to vanish. They glide aimlessly, haunt icy horizons, and linger at the fringes of known waters, waiting either to be discovered or to disappear forever. That is the eerie soul of the Resolute legend, a ghost ship that stubbornly resisted oblivion. There were those who believed something otherworldly guided her. Maritime folklore, rich with tales of spectral ships, found a new chapter in Resolute. Some imagined the spirits of Franklin's lost crew commandeering her spectral helm. steering her with phantom hands in a final defiant voyage against the ice that had devoured them. It was haunting, it was poetic, and in light of the ship's original purpose, strangely appropriate. But perhaps the greatest enigma within Resolute's story is what she ultimately came to symbolize, not an answer to the Franklin mystery, but an unsolved mystery herself. Built to uncover a historic disappearance, she became part of that very riddle, another entry in the Arctic's chilling registry of missing vessels and vanished men. Even today, her legacy lingers, not just through the famed Resolute desk, but in every eerie tale of unmanned ships found adrift without reason, every unexplained sighting of a vessel where no ship should be. HMS Resolute's tale reminds us that no matter how advanced our maps or tools, the sea remains a domain of secrets, a realm where reason falters and belief in ghosts becomes strangely plausible. From the Arctic's icy grip came not just a ship, but a story that refuses to sink, vanished without a trace. The enigma of the MV Joyita, crew gone, no distress signal, no wreckage, just silence where bustling activity once lived. Few maritime tales are as haunting as that of the MV Joyita, a ship found mysteriously deserted in the immense Pacific Ocean. Her story isn't one of icy waters or polar tragedy, but something much stranger. The MV Joyita began life in 1931 as a luxurious yacht. During the Second World War, she was drafted into military service in the Pacific. After surviving combat missions, she was repurposed post-war as a commercial vessel, ferrying cargo and passengers. By 1955, she was frequently traveling routes between Samoa and the Tokelau Islands. Though aging and plagued by recurring mechanical problems, she was still seen as seaworthy. On October 3, 1955, Joyita left Apia, Samoa, headed toward the Tokelau Islands, about 270 miles away. On board were 16 crew and 9 passengers, one of whom was a doctor en route for a medical operation. The journey was expected to last 2 days, but Joyita never arrived. A widespread search began, with aircraft and ships combing the Pacific. Days passed, then weeks. Nothing, no floating debris, no communication, no sign. It was as if the ship had vanished completely. But 5 weeks later, on November 10th, a merchant vessel came across something drifting more than 600 miles from Joyita's last known position, near Fiji. The ship was found listing heavily, partially submerged but still afloat. Her engine was non-functional, and the radio had been tuned to the International Emergency Channel, yet no distress message was ever picked up. The eeriest detail, the ship was entirely empty. Every one of the 25 souls on board had disappeared. Inside the vessel, investigators found unsettling details. The interior was disorganized, medical kits had been opened, and bloody bandages littered the floor. Lifeboats were missing. The ship's logbook and navigation tools were gone. A large hole pierced the deck, but there was no evidence of a catastrophic event. Oddly, her valuable cargo, oil drums, and medical supplies remained untouched. What became of those aboard? Speculation has persisted for decades. One theory posits that Joyita suffered mechanical failure and began taking on water. Panic may have set in, prompting an early evacuation, but the ship had not sunk and was designed to be virtually unsinkable due to its cork-lined hull. So why abandon it? Another theory points to piracy. Could raiders have forced everyone off the ship? Yet nothing was looted. Odd if theft was the motive. Others suggest a more disturbing possibility: violence from within. A mutiny? An assault? The bloody bandages hint at injury, perhaps even conflict. But without bodies or survivors, speculation is all that remains. The radio adds further intrigue. It was set to broadcast distress, suggesting someone tried to send an SOS, but none was ever received. Was the equipment faulty? Or was there not enough time before something terrible intervened? Today, the MV Joyita stands as one of the most perplexing maritime mysteries of the modern age. Unlike the Mary Celeste, which was found in pristine condition, Joyita told a tale of chaos, something abrupt, perhaps violent. What happened to the 25 individuals remains unanswered. Their fate, like so many legends of the sea, may forever be lost to the deep. The doomed voyage of the Erebus and Terror, a boundless, unforgiving sea where anything that vanishes may remain concealed for ages. This is a domain of extremes. Here, temperatures plunge to -50 degrees Fahrenheit, sunlight disappears for months, and ice relentlessly shifts, consuming all that stays too long. This frigid wilderness stands among the harshest environments on the planet, a place that has claimed countless lives. Yet for centuries, it has magnetized explorers, offering dreams of glory, discovery, and the chance to etch their names into the annals of history. Among those who braved it, one journey is remembered not for glory, but for its chilling, tragic fate. The saga of HMS Erebus and HMS Terror is one of the most haunting maritime enigmas ever told, a story woven with determination, ambition, and the merciless might of the Arctic. These ships weren't ordinary vessels. They were the centerpiece of one of the most daring 19th century missions, the quest to map the legendary Northwest Passage, a treacherous sea corridor that would connect the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans through the Arctic. But instead of triumph, the ships disappeared, leaving behind scattered remains, terrifying tales of human endurance, and a mystery that would take more than 150 years to piece together. By the mid-1800s, Britain was obsessed with conquering the Northwest Passage, a perilous icy route that held the potential to reshape global trade. For years, various expeditions had tried and failed, either retreating or vanishing into the frozen unknown. But in 1845, the British Royal Navy launched its most advanced and thoroughly planned Arctic venture yet. At the helm was Sir John Franklin, a seasoned Arctic explorer with multiple missions under his belt. Commanding 128 crew members aboard two heavily fortified ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, Franklin aimed to chart the final uncharted segment of the Northwest Passage. The vessels were state-of-the-art for their era. Originally designed as bomb ships built to endure cannon blasts, they were retrofitted for polar navigation with reinforced iron hulls to withstand crushing ice. They had steam engines to move through still waters and carried enough supplies to last more than 3 years. Each ship housed a library, scientific instruments, and even a hand-cranked organ to keep morale afloat during the dark, sunless Arctic winters. Every precaution had been taken. The expedition departed England in May 1845, pausing briefly in Greenland to send letters home. Their final confirmed sighting came in late July by whaling ships in Baffin Bay. At that time, all appeared well. They were confidently headed west into the Arctic unknown. After that, they vanished. Months passed without news. At first, British officials assumed a delay, not disaster. But as time dragged on without contact, anxiety mounted. In 1848, the first of several rescue missions was dispatched. The Arctic, however, revealed nothing. No debris, no survivors, only a frozen silence where 2 ships and 129 souls had once sailed. In the early 1850s, the first signs began to emerge. Explorer John Ray, leading a search party, encountered Inuit communities who recounted disturbing sightings, starving strangers wandering the ice. These men, according to accounts, had resorted to cannibalism before dying. Their corpses, scattered and frozen, were a grim echo of the expedition's fate. Then in 1859, another team made a breakthrough. On King William Island, a note was discovered inside a stone cairn, dated April 25, 1848. Its contents were dire. The ships had been locked in ice for over 18 months. Franklin had died in June 1847, along with many others. The survivors had abandoned the vessels, hoping to march south to safety. None survived. The note was one of the final documented messages from the doomed crew, but it couldn't explain everything. The events that followed were among the most horrific survival accounts in naval history. According to Inuit testimony, the men had been ravaged by frostbite, scurvy, and hunger. They were seen dragging makeshift sleds over the ice, gaunt and disoriented. Some had even been witnessed consuming the flesh of their fallen shipmates, a gruesome, yet sadly understandable, act under such unbearable conditions. When researchers examined crew remains in the late 20th century, the bones bore deep knife marks, matching those from skinning and butchering. The oral histories were validated. Despite exhaustive efforts, the vessels themselves remained hidden. The Arctic had claimed them, burying its truth beneath layers of ice and ocean. Erebus and Terror became spectral legends, ghost ships drifting through time, shrouded in hearsay and myth. Then, in 2014, everything changed. A Canadian team employing sonar and underwater robotics found HMS Erebus in Victoria Strait, remarkably intact on the seabed. 2 years later, HMS Terror was found over 50 miles away in Terror Bay, its hull pristine, its cabins eerily preserved. Inside, researchers discovered dishes still stacked on shelves, untouched furniture, and even personal journals and logs, frozen snapshots of the crew's last days. The wrecks had finally been found, solving the mystery of their location, but raising more questions about what led to their demise. Why were they stuck in the ice for so long? What truly caused the deaths of all 129 crew? One leading theory is lead poisoning. The expedition's canned rations were sealed with lead-based solder, and testing on recovered bones showed dangerously high lead levels, enough to impair thinking and worsen decision-making. Other ideas point to disease, tuberculosis, scurvy, combined with the brutal Arctic setting. Some historians suggest the men were doomed long before they had any real chance of escape. A more unsettling theory considers psychological collapse. Inuit accounts describe the survivors acting oddly, like they were mentally unraveling. Eyewitnesses saw pale, hollow-eyed men stumbling through the snow, barely able to speak. This has led to suggestions of botulism from tainted food or Arctic hysteria, a mental breakdown triggered by starvation and total isolation. There's also a lesser-known but chilling hypothesis: rogue waves. While rare in polar waters, freak waves can occur under extreme conditions, large enough to damage a ship or toss it into ice fields. Could such a wave have sealed their fate? Regardless of the cause, Erebus and Terror remain spectral monuments, silent testaments to a mission that ended in despair. Even now, divers explore the wrecks, uncovering frozen clues. But the full story of what befell Franklin's men, their agony, their final hours, may never be fully known. The fate of HMS Erebus and HMS Terror stands as a stark warning. The sea does not forgive. Ice, starvation, and exposure sealed the destiny of those aboard, leaving their vessels entombed beneath the Arctic for more than a century. And yet, not every maritime enigma ends beneath the waves. Sometimes a ship is found adrift, still waiting. The vanishing of HMS Atalanta, the mystery surrounding the Mary Celeste, stands among the most iconic ghost ship legends, a vessel located in perfect condition, yet entirely deserted. The crew disappeared without a trace, and although numerous explanations range from the plausible to the paranormal, the actual truth remains hidden beneath the icy waters of the Atlantic Ocean. However, ghost ship mysteries don't stop there. Across the centuries, numerous vessels have vanished, some taking every soul aboard with them, never to reappear. In 1880, the HMS Atalanta, a British training ship for naval cadets, became the center of one of the most confounding maritime disappearances in history. This vessel, loaded with youthful trainees, embarked on what should have been a simple and uneventful voyage, only to disappear completely. No survivors, no remains, just silence. The HMS Atalanta was not a combat vessel nor a commercial cargo ship. It functioned as a floating educational institution, built to prepare Royal Navy cadets for life on the high seas. Originally launched in 1844 as the HMS Juno, a sixth-rate frigate, it was repurposed and transformed into a training ship in 1878. Rechristened as Atalanta, it served as a mobile classroom, teaching aspiring sailors the realities of seafaring. In January 1880, the HMS Atalanta departed Bermuda, en route to England. On board were 281 individuals, most of them young recruits under the command of Captain Francis Sterling. The route was well-traveled and predictable, a routine transatlantic return trip. Yet, something went horribly awry. The ship never reached its destination. No messages of distress were transmitted, no pieces of wreckage recovered. The Atalanta had vanished without a sign, seemingly swallowed whole by the ocean. The disappearance of the HMS Atalanta triggered widespread alarm and an intensive search mission. Despite thoroughly scouring vast areas of the ocean for months, rescuers uncovered no clues. Neither the vessel nor any remains of the crew were located. One prevalent theory proposes that the Atalanta was overtaken by a ferocious storm. Winter in the North Atlantic is infamous for erratic and extreme weather conditions, and historians suggest the vessel may have encountered a fierce gale it could not withstand. Being a wooden sailing ship, it would have been especially vulnerable to sudden tempests. A storm of sufficient magnitude could have capsized or dismantled the ship entirely. Another plausible explanation involves the ship falling victim to a rare and sudden weather event called a white squall, an intense, abrupt storm capable of generating hurricane-level winds with little to no warning. If the Atalanta was struck by such a squall, it may have sunk before anyone could react. However, not all theories attribute the ship's disappearance to weather alone. Some argue that structural issues may have played a part. As a training ship, Atalanta was staffed by many unseasoned sailors. Their lack of experience in managing the rigging or navigating severe weather may have led to a critical error, perhaps during a storm, which rendered the ship unmanageable and doomed her to disaster. There's also speculation about rogue waves, gigantic, spontaneous walls of water, sometimes reaching over 80 feet in height. Such waves, capable of capsizing ships instantly, are another candidate. A single massive wave could have crushed the ship and sent it plunging into the depths without leaving a trace. And of course, there are more speculative theories. Some link the Atalanta's disappearance to the infamous Bermuda Triangle, as her last recorded location was close to the region synonymous with inexplicable vanishings. Although there's no solid evidence connecting the triangle to her fate, the total absence of debris or survivors has fueled suspicions that something more bizarre occurred. Despite multiple investigative efforts and prolonged searches, the HMS Atalanta was never located. The British Admiralty ultimately concluded that a storm had most likely claimed her. Yet, with no tangible evidence, no bodies, no debris, her disappearance continues to rank as one of the sea's enduring enigmas. The loss was catastrophic for the Royal Navy and spurred reforms in how training vessels were operated. Safety standards were strengthened, and new sailing routes were plotted to avoid particularly hazardous waters during peak storm months. But for the loved ones of the 281 crew members, there was no closure, no graves to visit, no concrete answers, just another ship taken by the deep, a silent casualty of the Atlantic's merciless depths. The mystery of the Resolute. The ocean often seems to erase people from existence. While some ships like the HMS Atalanta are lost forever beneath the waves, others, like the Resolute, resurface in eerily perfect condition but completely deserted, as if the crew had simply faded into thin air. The Resolute stands among the sea's most bewildering ghost ship tales. Found adrift in 1884, its sails billowed in the breeze, its cargo untouched, but no life remained aboard. This ship, a 130-ton merchant brig, was built for the tough demands of long-distance trade. In August 1884, the Resolute departed Wales headed for Newfoundland, transporting coal and general merchandise. Captain John James, a skilled and experienced mariner, led a modest but competent crew. All indicators pointed to a safe, ordinary voyage. The ship was in good shape. The weather was agreeable. Nothing was out of the ordinary. But that changed once the ship entered open waters. A few days after its departure, another vessel, the Hussar, spotted the Resolute floating aimlessly off Newfoundland's coast. At first glance, everything appeared fine. The ship was intact, sails aloft, gliding smoothly with the wind. But as the Hussar approached, something seemed terribly wrong. No one was visible on deck. No answers came to hails or signals. The ship appeared to be sailing itself, a lifeless ghost. When the crew of the Hussar finally boarded the Resolute, what they discovered was chilling. There were no signs of conflict or chaos. The captain's quarters were orderly, his bed neatly made, his belongings in place. The rest of the crew's personal items were also undisturbed. The cargo was fully intact, with no signs of theft or violence. Even the logbook remained, its last entry revealing nothing out of the ordinary, only routine notes about a typical journey. Only two things were missing: the lifeboat and the entire crew. It was clear the crew had departed the ship, but the big question was, why? The vessel wasn't damaged. The hull was intact. There were no leaks, no indications of flooding. Food and supplies were still on board. The weather had been calm, yet everything indicated the crew had exited quickly, though without apparent fear or struggle. This has remained a puzzle for more than 100 years. Many theories attempt to explain what may have driven the crew to flee such a stable vessel. One suggestion is that they were misled by an illusion of danger. Possibly, the ship encountered dense fog or strange atmospheric conditions that gave the impression of imminent peril. If they wrongly believed the vessel was sinking, they may have abandoned ship in haste, only to become lost at sea. But this leads to another mystery. Why would such seasoned sailors, including a veteran captain, make such a grave mistake when no real danger was present? Others point toward the possibility of criminal intervention. While piracy was on the decline by the late 1800s, it wasn't entirely unheard of. Some believe another ship may have intercepted the Resolute and compelled the crew to evacuate into the lifeboat, leaving the brig adrift. Yet, this theory falls apart when considering the total lack of signs: no struggle, no missing goods, no pirate activity in the vicinity. There's also the rogue wave hypothesis again. These towering, deadly waves can strike without warning and wreak havoc in seconds. If one had hit suddenly, it might have swept away crew members or frightened them into abandoning the ship. But again, the absence of structural damage casts doubt on this explanation. Then come the more mysterious ideas. Like many maritime legends, whispers of ghostly forces and supernatural happenings surround the fate of the Resolute. Some believe the ship was cursed, luring its crew overboard through unseen forces. Others cite sea monsters, common fears among sailors of the time, as possible culprits. While such notions reside more in myth than reality, they do speak to the eerie and unexplained nature of the case. Ultimately, the Resolute was towed ashore, where investigators tried to piece together what had transpired, but no trace of the crew was ever recovered. The lifeboat never turned up. No conclusive cause was ever established. The Resolute remains a chilling maritime riddle. Another ghost ship returned from the ocean, yet devoid of the very people who once gave it life. A solitary shell drifting through the endless and mysterious expanse of the sea. The tale of SV Belle Amica and SS Waratah. When it comes to the mysteries of the ocean, a ship can transform into a ghostly legend in mere moments. Yet not all ghost ships are artifacts from centuries past, and not every one of them sinks beneath the waves. Some vessels emerge from nowhere, drifting into view without any forewarning or rationale. Such was the case in 2006 near the coast of Sardinia, Italy. An elegant, polished yacht silently appeared, a vessel known as SV Belle Amica. It seemed out of place, devoid of any crew and untouched by distress. Unlike the aged, deteriorating relics of old sea tales, this vessel looked nearly pristine, as though its occupants had just stepped away and never came back. The SV Belle Amica was initially sighted by Italy's Coast Guard near Portovolo, a scenic area of the Sardinian shoreline famed for its crystal-clear waters and affluent tourists. At first, the yacht appeared to belong to one such wealthy traveler, given its stylish and contemporary design. It was a schooner outfitted with high-end gear, packed with gourmet food and personal effects. In the galley, meals sat half-eaten, clothing lay scattered in cabins, and French maps and papers covered a navigation table. But no crew was aboard. No emergency signals had been sent, and there was no clear sign of what had transpired. This eerie scenario quickly caught the imagination of people across the globe. How could such a meticulously maintained yacht, clearly outfitted for comfort, be left completely abandoned? Initial theories were cinematic: piracy, abduction, perhaps even something supernatural. The image of an empty yacht swaying gently in Sardinia's sunlit sea evoked haunting comparisons to the infamous Mary Celeste. However, answers came more swiftly than expected. Officials tracked the yacht to its owner, a wealthy individual from Luxembourg. As per official accounts, the incident was not the result of violence or calamity. It was a mundane case of the owner deserting the vessel, likely to avoid docking charges or legal hassles. Though uncommon, this is not unheard of in the world of private yachting. So, SV Belle Amica wasn't a ghost ship born from catastrophe, but from willful abandonment. Yet, this logical explanation did little to diminish its mysterious appeal. Its presence reminded people of a deep-rooted maritime fear, that a ship's soul is its crew. Without them, it becomes an empty shell, adrift and eerie. Even with the facts laid bare, there's something undeniably chilling about a yacht set for dinner, floating quietly, its guests vanished without a trace. SV Belle Amica was not ancient, cursed, or even tragic, but it's still morphed into a modern maritime myth, a reminder that the sea doesn't always need tempests or tragedy to claim its travelers. Sometimes all it takes is a quiet departure, and a vessel turns into an enduring mystery. While this particular story had resolution, countless other ships, older and more storied, continue to roam history's waters with no answers in sight. One such vessel began her journey not as a myth, but as a marvel. The vanishing of SS Waratah. The merciless waves off the South African coast are infamous for claiming ships and never returning them. While some vessels like HMS Resolute have mysteriously reappeared, others vanish completely, leaving nothing but silence. One of the most haunting of these disappearances is that of the SS Waratah, a luxurious passenger liner that vanished in 1909 and earned the ominous nickname, the Titanic of the Southern Hemisphere. The SS Waratah was constructed during a booming period for ocean liners, when sea travel was both necessity and status. Built in 1908 by the Blue Anchor Line, Waratah stretched over 465 feet and weighed more than 9,300 tons. She was designed to be both a lavish passenger liner and a functional cargo carrier. First-class travelers enjoyed ornate dining halls, plush wooden lounges, and state-of-the-art accommodations of the Edwardian age. Meanwhile, her holds carried essential exports from Australia: wool, meat, and valuable ores. Waratah's maiden journey from London to Sydney proceeded without incident, and the vessel seemed to meet expectations. However, subtle concerns began to surface. Some crew and passengers noted the ship's instability in turbulent seas, describing an awkward, sluggish sway that suggested top-heaviness. These concerns were brushed aside. She was a brand-new ship built by a respected company. By July 1909, Waratah was returning from her second trip to Australia. On July 26, she departed from Durban, South Africa, en route to Cape Town. This leg of the journey took her through a region known for fierce weather and strong currents, the meeting point of the Indian and Atlantic Oceans. Initially, her voyage appeared smooth. The following morning, a cargo ship named Clan McIntyre spotted her. The two ships exchanged standard signals and greetings, with nothing appearing out of place. Waratah continued on course, never to be seen again. When she failed to dock in Cape Town, concern escalated rapidly. A full-scale search was launched, covering vast swaths of coastline and open sea. Vessels scanned the horizon for lifeboats, wreckage, anything that could provide a clue. But nothing surfaced. No calls for help, no fragments, no oil slicks. Speculation exploded. Had Waratah collided with a hidden reef? Succumbed to a massive rogue wave? Capsized due to flawed design? Each theory had merit, yet none could be substantiated. Rogue waves, once dismissed as sailor myths, are now recognized phenomena. capable of rising over 80 feet and occurring in exactly the kind of waters Waratah was traversing. If one struck her and she was already unstable, it could have sent her to the bottom in seconds without a chance to broadcast an SOS. Over time, the ship's legend grew. Tales emerged of ghostly sightings, Waratah drifting like a phantom along South Africa's coast. Fishermen spoke of strange lights appearing and vanishing on the waves. One captain even claimed to have seen a ghost ship that mirrored Waratah's features, only to watch it vanish instantly. Decades passed, but the search for Waratah never truly ended. In the 1980s, treasure hunter Emlyn Brown dedicated over 20 years to finding her. He deployed sonar, remotely operated vehicles, and led numerous expeditions. Each promising lead turned out to be either natural formations or unrelated wrecks. Eventually, Brown conceded defeat, believing the ship would never be located. So what truly befell the Waratah? One prevailing theory points to her contentious design. Early reports of her imbalance in stormy conditions hint at fundamental flaws. If her cargo shifted or ballast wasn't properly adjusted during a storm, she might have capsized abruptly, leaving no time for reaction. Another possibility is structural weakness. As a hybrid design balancing luxury and cargo, she may have succumbed to internal stress during severe weather, breaking apart and sinking rapidly. Human error also remains a factor. Though her captain, Ilbury, was seasoned, even experienced navigators make mistakes, especially along South Africa's perilous coastlines. If the ship struck something submerged or ran aground, it might have sunk swiftly, erasing all signs. Other more fantastical ideas have been proposed, like a secret collision or sabotage, but no evidence has ever substantiated them. All we know is that a modern vessel, helmed by a skilled crew and outfitted with the best technology of its time, disappeared entirely. What makes Waratah's fate particularly disturbing is its total silence. Most shipwrecks, even in deep waters, eventually leave some trace, wreckage, lifeboats, or flotsam. But Waratah left behind nothing. It's as if the sea swallowed her whole without a ripple. To this day, the SS Waratah remains among the greatest maritime enigmas, a haunting testament to the sea's might. Some believe she lies deep within underwater canyons off the wild coast, areas too dangerous to fully probe. Others think she drifted far from her planned route, carried by powerful currents around the Cape of Good Hope before plunging into the abyss. Whatever the truth, the Waratah has transcended being just a lost ship. She has become a maritime ghost story, whispered by sailors when fog envelops the horizon and the sky merges with the sea. A chilling reminder that, no matter how advanced our vessels may be, the ocean always has the final say. SS Arctic, a forgotten Atlantic tragedy, transitioning from the frozen phantom vessel Jenny, forever adrift in the relentless southern seas. We now revisit a ship whose legacy began not amid ice and isolation, but in an era driven by grand ambitions and transatlantic rivalry. This is the account of the SS Arctic, a vessel designed to dominate the Atlantic with grace and speed, yet remembered for a disaster so profound, it echoed across continents and etched itself into maritime lore. Launched in the year 1850, the SS Arctic was a celebrated marvel commissioned by the Collins Line, an American firm vying to challenge Britain's maritime supremacy led by the Cunard Line. During this golden age of steam travel, the ocean had become a battleground of innovation and elegance. Every shipping company raced to offer the fastest, safest, and most opulent journey between Europe and America. The Arctic, in this fierce competition, stood tall as the company's flagship. Measuring nearly 300 feet in length, she was a grand sidewheel steamer equipped to transport both elite travelers and high-value cargo across the vast Atlantic at unmatched speeds. With her sleek design and cutting-edge engineering, the Arctic embodied the national pride of a rapidly industrializing America. Her interiors rivaled the grandeur of elite hotels, adorned with polished wood paneling, airy staterooms, and lavish dining spaces. The affluent eagerly booked their passage, drawn to the promise of modern luxury aboard a vessel that stood as a symbol of progress. Yet beneath the surface of this glamour, danger lurked. Steamships, still a relatively recent advancement, were often plagued by mechanical failures, and in the volatile waters of the North Atlantic, even the most robust ships faced threats from storms, collisions, and hidden ice. On September 27, 1854, the Arctic set sail from Liverpool to New York with more than 400 individuals on board. Among them were members of prestigious American families and a hold filled with freight. The ocean was calm, and the voyage seemed uneventful until catastrophe struck. Just off the coast of Newfoundland, the Arctic collided with the Vesta, a significantly smaller French vessel. The impact tore a breach below her waterline, and it became immediately apparent that the Arctic was doomed. But it wasn't merely the sinking that horrified the world. It was the grim descent into chaos that followed. In an age before wireless communications or efficient rescue systems, survival depended entirely on crew readiness and sheer fortune. Aboard the Arctic, panic consumed all. Most of the crew lacked training for emergencies and quickly scrambled for their own escape. Lifeboats, already too few for the number of souls on board, were either sent off half-empty or commandeered by crew members, leaving passengers behind. The expected code of saving women and children first was grossly abandoned. Of the 400+ on board, only 85 survived, and the majority were crewmen. Nearly all of the women and children, including the wife and children of Captain James Luce, were lost to the sea. The calamity sent shockwaves around the world, not merely because of the number of lives lost, but because of the moral collapse and selfishness laid bare in its final moments. Newspapers on both sides of the Atlantic railed against the Arctic disaster, portraying it as a cautionary tale of unchecked ambition and failure to prioritize safety over opulence. The ship became a dark symbol of cowardice and the perils of progress divorced from accountability. Yet the Arctic's tale didn't end when she slipped beneath the waves. Over time, eerie tales began to circulate. Fishermen near Newfoundland reported ghostly lights moving below the sea's surface. Some even claimed sightings of a phantom steamer with shattered paddle wheels gliding silently through the mist, only to vanish before daylight. Whether real or imagined, these accounts added a spectral quality to an already tragic saga. Despite knowing the approximate site of the collision, the SS Arctic's wreck has never been definitively found. Experts believe she drifted for a time before finally descending into deeper, less accessible regions. Modern expeditions have made only minimal efforts to locate her, overshadowed by more famous shipwrecks. Her final location, as well as the condition in which she sank, remain unresolved mysteries. The disaster also left an enduring legacy in maritime law. Public outcry over the shameful abandonment of women and children prompted discussions that would eventually lead to stricter safety measures, most notably lifeboat regulations. Though it would take future tragedies like the Titanic to formalize international protocols, the Arctic's failure marked a turning point in public expectations for sea travel. For the Collins Line, however, the disaster was a fatal blow. Shamed by the debacle and overwhelmed by the backlash, the company struggled to recover and eventually succumbed to its competitors, disappearing from the pages of history. The SS Arctic's story is more than a chronicle of one ill-fated voyage. It captures a time when humanity flirted with the edges of technological possibility and peril. It's a narrative about dreams built on fragile ground, where splendor coexisted with negligence and advancement clashed with hubris. Beneath the cold, unforgiving waters of the North Atlantic, the Arctic remains, a silent monument to forgotten souls and unanswered questions. Her legacy endures not just in maritime records, but in the moral reckoning she forced upon an age of ambition. From grandeur to ruin, innovation to infamy, the SS Arctic remains a solemn reminder. No matter how advanced our inventions become, the sea is a force beyond mastery. And perhaps as the currents continue to swirl above her hidden grave, her tale is far from over. Whether she will ever be found or remain an eternal shadow of the Atlantic, only time will decide. The enigmatic voyage of the SS Bechimo, a tale of Arctic mystery. The ocean is a realm of ceaseless motion. Currents meander, tides ebb and flow, and waves relentlessly kiss the shores. Ships traverse these waters, some succumbing to tempests, others vanishing into obscurity. Yet, what transpires when a vessel neither sinks nor disappears, but instead lingers, drifting through the seas for decades, appearing and vanishing like a specter? Such is the saga of the SS Bechimo, one of maritime history's most renowned ghost ships, a vessel that defied demise. Constructed in 1914, the Bechimo was a steam-powered cargo ship engineered to brave the formidable Arctic conditions of the northern seas. Initially launched under the German flag, the ship changed ownership after World War I, coming under the control of the Hudson's Bay Company, a dominant entity in the fur trade. The Bechimo's mission was to ferry pelts and supplies between northern Canada and southern trading ports, navigating the icy Arctic waters annually without incident. By 1931, the ship had become a familiar sight along the frozen trade routes, helmed by seasoned sailors adept at handling the harsh conditions. However, that year brought unforeseen challenges. As winter approached and ice formed earlier than anticipated, the Bechimo became ensnared in the frozen waters off Alaska's coast. While such entrapments were not uncommon in Arctic trade, this instance proved more severe. The crew's efforts to liberate the ship from the thickening ice were in vain, and as temperatures plummeted, it became evident that the vessel was immobilized. Confronted with the brutal reality of an Arctic winter, the crew made the arduous decision to abandon the ship. They constructed a temporary shelter on the ice, intending to endure the season while keeping vigil over the Bechimo, hoping for a chance to reclaim it. Then, a ferocious blizzard swept through the area, with howling winds and blinding snow reducing visibility to near zero. When the storm subsided, the crew discovered that the Bechimo had vanished. Initially, they presumed the vessel had succumbed to the ice, dragged beneath the surface by the relentless Arctic forces. However, days later, local Inuit hunters reported sightings of the ship drifting through the ice fields, eerily intact. Determined, the crew tracked the Bechimo down, finding it floating aimlessly miles from its last known position. Yet, the damage inflicted by the ice rendered the ship too unstable to salvage, too perilous for another voyage. With no alternatives, the Hudson's Bay Company officially abandoned the Bechimo, expecting it to be claimed by the ocean. Contrary to expectations, the Bechimo did not sink. Instead, it transformed into something rare in maritime history, a true ghost ship. Over the ensuing decades, the Bechimo continued to appear in various parts of the Arctic, drifting silently through the ice, perpetually in motion, never settling. Sailors, hunters, and explorers would unexpectedly encounter the ship, sometimes glimpsing its dark hull emerging through the fog. Each time, it was abandoned, unmanned, yet still afloat, as if defying the sea's grasp. In 1932, a year after its abandonment, Inuit hunters encountered the ship again, still intact and drifting aimlessly. In 1933, a group of traders managed to board it, hoping to claim it, only to be thwarted by another brutal storm that forced them to flee before they could take control. Repeatedly, the Bechimo was seen and approached, but never successfully salvaged. One of the most notable sightings occurred in 1939 when explorers boarded the ship and reported that, despite years adrift in the Arctic, much of the cargo and interior remained largely untouched. Yet again, an impending storm compelled them to abandon it. It seemed as though the Bechimo possessed a will of its own, resisting capture. Naval Historia. As years passed, sightings became less frequent. Occasionally, passing ships or Inuit travelers would report glimpses of the Bechimo, still floating, still resisting submersion. However, with each new sighting, the ship's condition deteriorated. Ice had exacted its toll, storms had battered its hull, and the structure had gradually collapsed. In 1969, the Bechimo was seen for the last time. A group of travelers reported spotting the ghost ship, its skeletal remains barely holding together, still afloat but scarcely recognizable as the once proud cargo vessel. After that, it was never seen again. What became of the Bechimo? Most assume that after nearly 4 decades of drifting, it finally succumbed to the Arctic, the ice that once tried to claim it in 1931 ultimately succeeding, dragging the ship beneath the waves and burying it forever in the cold, dark depths. Yet no wreckage has ever been found, and its final resting place remains undiscovered. Thus, the mystery endures. Did the Bechimo truly meet its end, or does it still lie hidden beneath the ice, awaiting discovery? It stands as one of history's longest-lasting ghost ships, a vessel that defied nature, storms, and time itself, sailing on long after it should have been gone. The ocean has always been a realm of enigma, a vast, unforgiving expanse that swallows ships, secrets, and sometimes entire crews without a trace. For centuries, sailors have ventured into the unknown, some never to return, leaving behind only fragments of their stories. Some of these disappearances remain unsolved, the wrecks still waiting to be found beneath the waves. Yet others, once lost to history, have been rediscovered, preserved time capsules resting in the deep, holding the final moments of their doomed voyages. Few maritime tragedies are as haunting as the story of the SS Bechimo, a vessel that defied the odds, becoming a legend of the Arctic seas. The frozen mystery of the lost schooner. Let us rewind the maritime clock even further, diving into a tale that seems to come straight from a sailor's darkest dream. This is the eerie chronicle of the Jenny, a vessel not only swallowed by history, but seemingly captured in a moment, untouched by time. Unlike the mechanical wonders of the 20th century, the Jenny's tale invokes the pure, merciless might of nature at its most remote, the Antarctic, vast, glacial, and lethal, a place where ships are known to vanish. But Jenny's fate wasn't simple disappearance. It was her strange return that chills the spine. The saga of the Jenny starts in the early 1820s, during the booming period of whaling and sealing. At that time, the Southern Ocean and waters around Antarctica were perilous yet promising, as vessels from Europe and North America risked deadly journeys in pursuit of valuable whale oil and seal pelts. Jenny, a modest schooner hailing from the Isle of Wight, was one such ship. She set sail into some of the most hostile and distant waters on the planet and was never heard from again. She didn't send a single message home, and like so many ships of her kind, faded into the forgotten archives of maritime tragedies, likely considered lost to a storm or crushed beneath the ever-shifting Antarctic ice. For years, Jenny's absence was merely another entry among countless oceanic vanishings. Then came a terrifying report. In 1840, a whaling ship named the Hope was crossing the Drake Passage, a hazardous waterway between Cape Horn of South America and Antarctica, when its crew spotted something strange adrift in the frozen seascape. A schooner, seemingly frozen in place, its sails worn but intact, its masts sheathed in frost, and its hull held motionless in the icy grip of the sea. As the Hope drew near, its sailors saw something even more disturbing. Human forms on board, frozen solid, caught mid-action as if frozen in the middle of their final moments. According to this chilling tale, the Hope's crew boarded the icy vessel and found a horror scene. The Jenny's entire crew still aboard, each man frozen in place. The captain himself was supposedly discovered at his desk, pen in hand, a logbook open before him. The final entry, written in haunting ink, read, May 4th, 1823. No food for 71 days. I am the only one left alive. This painted a grim portrait of gradual starvation as the ship lay imprisoned in Antarctic ice, the crew powerless to flee. But if the date was true, the entry had been penned 17 years earlier. Jenny's legend has since drifted into the shadowy world of nautical myth. Its origins are cloudy, shaped by repetition, exaggeration, and the passage of time. There's no definitive record of the Jenny's departure from the Isle of Wight, nor any verifiable mention of her sighting in the logs of the Hope. Yet the tale reflects a recurring theme in ghost ship folklore, a vessel disappearing in a distant, dangerous sea only to return eerily preserved, wrapped in enigma. Whether Jenny truly existed as described remains uncertain, but the underlying conditions of her story are disturbingly plausible. The Southern Ocean, with its sub-zero temperatures, is known to preserve ships and even human remains for decades. In fact, researchers today have uncovered well-preserved wooden vessels in Antarctic waters, their structure protected by the cold, just as the Jenny might have been. There's also the nightmarish prospect of being locked in polar ice. Before the invention of icebreakers and satellite navigation, ships were frequently surprised by encroaching pack ice. Once trapped, they faced a dire choice: attempt a land escape or remain aboard, eventually succumbing to starvation or hypothermia. Documented cases like the Franklin expedition in the Arctic and Shackleton's Endurance expedition in Antarctica showcase just how swiftly the ice can consume a vessel and everyone aboard. Viewed in that light, Jenny's end feels heartbreakingly possible. Still, if she were real, why do official logs remain silent? Some historians speculate that the tale may have been inspired by a real encounter with a frozen vessel, later enhanced into legend by sailors eager to spin a spine-chilling yarn over a warm drink. Swapping ghost stories was common practice among seafarers, especially those navigating the Earth's most punishing waters, where fact and fable often intertwined. Others proposed that the Jenny's narrative served as a dire warning, an oral tradition meant to caution young sailors about the perils of venturing too far south unprepared. Regardless of its origins, the legend persists. It is kept alive in books about nautical enigmas, articles, documentaries, and in the minds of those intrigued by ghost ships. Jenny's tale speaks to a deep-seated fear that the ocean might not only take your life but preserve it, locking you forever in a frozen limbo, drifting without end. It's a haunting reminder of how little we still know about our planet's most isolated marine frontiers. Even today, Antarctic exploration is fraught with difficulty, and large stretches of the Southern Ocean remain largely uncharted. Could other Jennys be hidden beneath the ice, waiting to be discovered? More chilling is the fact that, in modern times, such a discovery wouldn't be dismissed as impossible. Science has shown how cold polar environments can protect vessels for centuries, and how even the smallest wooden ships can endure when conditions align. Whether Jenny was truly a ghost ship or simply a sailor's haunting tale, her story carries a deep resonance. The sea is a ruthless force. In the immense, barren expanse of the Southern Ocean, survival often hinges on sheer chance. For every ship that returns to port, there are those that vanish without a trace. And for those like the Jenny, whose return only deepens the mystery, the questions left behind may never find answers. The frozen secret of SS Kamloops. As the Arctic succumbs to the merciless pull of the Atlantic, we now journey to the frigid core of North America's Great Lakes, to a shipwreck nestled surprisingly close to land, yet no less chilling or enigmatic. This is the tale of the SS Kamloops, a freighter that mysteriously disappeared into the cold waters of Lake Superior in 1927, giving rise to a ghost story that still lingers. Central to this haunting legend is not just the sunken ship, but one remarkable human form within, a preserved corpse divers have named Old Whitey, a spectral sentinel suspended in the deep. Constructed in 1924, the SS Kamloops was a Canadian cargo steamer, part of a fleet built to ferry goods across the vast Great Lakes. Measuring 250 feet in length, the Kamloops wasn't the biggest vessel afloat, but she was cutting edge for her time, featuring a steel-plated hull and engineered to withstand the infamous and unpredictable tempests that often sweep across Lake Superior. This massive freshwater lake, notorious for its fierce storms and dangerous currents, had already consumed numerous ships by the time Kamloops joined the trade. Nonetheless, her crew trusted the resilient freighter. No one foresaw she would become one of Lake Superior's most well-known maritime enigmas. On December 6, 1927, the Kamloops departed from Fort William, Ontario, en route to Isle Royale, loaded with food, pipes, and industrial gear. The voyage was expected to be routine, but a devastating winter gale descended on the lake. It pounded the vessel with icy gusts and massive waves that towered above her decks. Other ships caught in the storm reached safe harbor. The Kamloops simply vanished. No emergency message was ever heard. No floating wreckage emerged. Not a single crew member was located. Months later, a few supplies and life preservers were found scattered along Our Royal's rocky shoreline. Yet the ship herself had completely disappeared. For over 50 years, the Kamloops lay lost beneath Superior's icy grip. In the absence of answers, local lore flourished. Her story passed between sailors and fishermen in hushed tones. Some claimed the vessel had been devoured entirely by the storm and plunged so deeply into the abyss that even expert divers would never reach her. Others whispered of strange lights dancing offshore, phantom glows flitting beneath the surface, as though the Kamloops still wandered beneath the waves, trying to return home. But without a physical wreck, the tale remained a ghost story until that changed. In 1977, amateur divers exploring near Isle Royale unexpectedly uncovered an exceptionally well-preserved shipwreck. The name etched into the hull removed all doubt. It was the SS Kamloops. Resting over 260 feet underwater, the freighter lay upright on the lake floor. Her metal skin remained mostly whole. Her cargo, though scattered, was still identifiable. After 5 decades submerged in Superior's frigid depths, the Kamloops was astonishingly intact. The lake's oxygen-starved, near-freezing environment had transformed the vessel into a watery time capsule. But the most spine-chilling find waited inside. In the engine compartment, divers encountered a human body. It was preserved to such a degree that it seemed almost alive. The icy temperatures had nearly halted decay. The skin had turned a ghostly, wax-like white. The figure hovered just above the floor, still tethered by tattered remnants of clothing or equipment, slowly drifting in the current. The divers gave the figure a nickname, Old Whitey. The moniker came from the eerie pale complexion, a haunting symbol of just how powerfully Lake Superior can preserve those it claims. Old Whitey evolved into a legend on his own, a poignant embodiment of the Kamloops' tragedy and a testament to the lake's unnatural ability to keep its dead intact. Unlike most who perish at sea, whose bodies decay, surface, or vanish altogether, Old Whitey remained untouched by time, suspended in the cold silence as if waiting. Divers returning to the wreck spoke of the unease they felt approaching the engine room. There was a sense that someone had stayed behind, a presence that hadn't left. Some divers described feeling observed, as though Old Whitey's essence remained alongside his remains, his body adrift like a ghost between worlds, a haunting symbol of the lost men still entombed in their steel grave. Theories about his identity abound. A mechanic? A deckhand? The captain, perhaps? No confirmed records exist. The truth behind Old Whitey's life remains sealed in mystery. His discovery reignited fascination with the Kamloops' fate. What truly led her to the bottom? Investigations suggest the brutal storm of December 1927 played the main role. Ferocious winds and icy spray could have blanketed the decks and superstructure with ice, tipping the vessel's balance and rendering her unstable. It's likely the Kamloops capsized or sank amid the chaos. Yet, questions persist. Why was no SOS ever transmitted? Why did no other bodies surface, apart from those entombed within? The answers may lie within Lake Superior's nature. It's regarded as one of the most treacherous inland seas in the world. Its vast size, bone-chilling depth, and volatile weather combine to trap unfortunate ships forever. Many wrecks that vanish in Superior never re-emerge, lost to the dark, cold silence. Even advanced sonar technology often struggles to locate vessels in the lake's deepest, frigid trenches. And for some, the tale of the Kamloops and Old Whitey forms part of a larger story. Many believe Lake Superior is cursed, a resting place that refuses to release its dead. Divers have spoken of preserved remains in other wrecks, silent white forms floating in the shadows, unmoving, untouched, eternal. Whether the lake's secrets are paranormal or purely physical, its legacy as a keeper of the dead only deepens. Today, the Kamloops is a grim yet revered dive destination. Due to its extreme depth and freezing water, it's accessible only to highly trained technical divers. Those who make the descent often pause at the engine room, silently acknowledging old Whitey, still suspended there, close to a century later. His presence, and the sunken ship around him, remains a chilling reminder. The Great Lakes are more than majestic waters. They are submerged cemeteries, and in their cold embrace lie forgotten stories, perhaps destined never to surface.